Hi, Lisa. Welcome to the Leaders Lab.
Hello, Ken. It's an honor and pleasure to be here with you today.
I can't wait to dive in on your backstory. Maybe you can just start us with early career, where you grew up, wherever you want to start. Lay it on us.
Okay. Wow. All right. Well, I'm going to try to make this as concise as possible. It's been a long life and a long career. So I was born and raised in a very small fishing town in Massachusetts, Gloucester, Massachusetts, the oldest seaport in the country. And most of the kids I went to school with, it was an Italian, it still is an Italian and Portuguese town, and pretty much everyone made their living fishing. At least all the men. Women didn't, not when I was a kid, didn't go out, but they certainly do now. My parents were always in the hospitality business. So I always say I started in hospitality when I was 6 years old, working in our coffee shop. And I lived in a town on the water. So I found it very serendipitous that I ended up spending almost 40 years in the cruise industry, hospitality on the water. So my life has really it's really been a parallel life in terms of it seems I've always been attracted to the sea and industry and business on the water. I started in the cruise business completely by accident, sort of in 1983, but I started in the company in 1985. I started in the travel business in 1983. And then I started at the lowest level of sales. I was calling door to door as a door to door salesman. And 30 years later, I made my way to president and CEO of Celebrity Cruises. I had a lot of different positions along the way. My career was wonderful, and I learned the business inside out, upside down. And yeah, and then I finally left after almost 40 years.
Wow. I'm guessing, maybe incorrectly, so correct me if I'm wrong, but, and again, this might be just a manufactured thought that I have, but I'm thinking 1985 cruise industry, and we're just barely post like Love Boat days, right? And
Right. Yeah.
was there a lot of a lot of female leadership in that? I mean, I got to think that that had to be a male
Yeah.
dominated industry for the most part.
Yeah. Only recently has there honestly started to be some women leadership, but
Mhm.
no, I grew up in a completely male dominated industry, not only in on the corporate side of it, but especially on the operational side of it, and especially on the ships. I mean, everybody was a man. Now, my career, I'm a sales and marketing girl, so there was a lot of gender balance in sales and marketing. So I
Mhm.
really didn't um, notice the gender imbalance when I was in sales and marketing because I wasn't hanging around with the executives. I was, doing my thing. And the people that I was surrounded by were, very balanced in terms of gender. You had women leading sales, you had women leading marketing, you had women salespeople, men salespeople, women marketers, male marketers. So only when I entered operations in 2005 did it really start to hit me that it was all men. And so I went into a leadership position at Celebrity at the time in 2005, and I was the only woman in the operation.
Were you in the 20 years prior when you were in sales and marketing? So you weren't in leadership at all? Was it mostly individual contributor roles or were you leading within sales?
No, 17 years I spent in sales and progressive leadership roles. So I
Okay.
was, yep, I rose through the ranks. The only job I ever wanted, though, which is interesting, Ken, I'll tell you, is I loved sales. I'm pretty good at it.
Mhm.
I say no matter what we do, we're selling. And it was a tremendous way to start my career. But I only had one aspiration, and that was to be the head of sales. I was waiting for my boss to retire. I had, um, risen through the ranks in sales, done all the jobs in sales, and I was waiting for him to decide he didn't want to work anymore so I could get his job. The reality is I never got his job. I was moved from sales into marketing before that happened. And that was my first change from sales that was one of many, moving from sales to marketing to hotel operations to marine and hotel operations, and then to president and CEO of.
Did you have mentors around you that, even if it was unspoken, kind of recognized your potential and intentionally made those moves on your behalf, or kind of shoved you in certain directions? Because I know we've done that a lot, when I was in corporate leadership, where in fact, sometimes I'd take the thing they least wanted to do, and I'd be like, if this person has, maybe we didn't see CEO potential that early, but right, if this person has potential to become a GM, but they're missing the sales component, so they're avoiding the sales component, let's get them into sales,
Yeah.
because we may know better than they do what they're capable of, right? Did you get some of that?
Well, yes, I did. And I always say I had advocates. And the gentleman that actually moved me from sales into marketing really believed that high potential people should move around the company and learn the different aspects of the company because it makes them a more well-rounded professional and also gives them a greater potential for advancement. I didn't realize that. I didn't recognize that. One of the lessons that I learned along the way is that you should believe in yourself as much as other people believe in you, because I obviously didn't. I thought that my career was going to begin and end in sales in the company, and the reality was very different than that because I had advocates who were all men, by the way, and who moved me all around the company and ultimately into the president and CEO role. I was the first woman to actually hold three different positions in our company. I was the first woman to be the senior vice president of hotel operations, first woman to be the executive vice president of all of operations, hotel and marine, and then the first woman to become president and CEO of one of the brands within our corporation.
Now, in your run as CEO, that encompassed COVID, and I can't think of an industry that was
Yeah.
more
Yeah.
impacted. I mean, at all. You and I were just talking about something beforehand where you had just launched an
Yeah.
all woman cruise, as far as it being run by all women,
Yeah.
about a week prior
Yeah.
to literally everything
Yeah.
shutting down. What was that? I cannot
Yeah.
imagine a more challenging CEO job than that. I'm sure you guys had CNN and everybody else calling you and asking for quotes. You had ships out at sea. I mean,
Yeah.
tell me about that.
Yeah. It was crazy. So, I have
your
my
your
book Making
your
Waves. Go ahead, what?
no, your pause when I see it, because no one can see it, and the pause, and even the way you're holding your head right now, it's almost like PTSD. I just wanted to touch on
It
it real
is.
quick.
I know. Well, listen, I completely understand why you want to take me back there, but honestly, it really is PTSD. And, I have, my book, Making Waves, the first chapter is Sailing Through the Storm. And what I say right up front is I went from the highest of highs in my career, which was March 8th, 2020, International Women's Day. The bridge was entirely manned by women, first time ever in our industry, first and last time ever in our industry. And we were the only brand that could do it because of all the focus we had on gender balance. And every other woman on the ship every other operational area of the ship was led by a woman on that cruise. Our brand had just launched the Edge series, which was transformational. We had transformed the financial performance of the brand. And here I am standing in the Grand Plaza during that cruise, celebrating with all the women and all the guests. It was incredible. And I remember thinking it was like a mic drop moment. If I drop the mic right now and I walk away right now, I will have accomplished more than I ever thought in my entire life and career. I got off the ship midweek. I went back to the office, I think Wednesday or Thursday, went home for the week on Friday. And on the 15th, Sunday, March 15th, we made the decision to voluntarily shut down. And we were closed for business for 15 months. So I went from the highest of highs to the lowest of lows in my career, something I never in my wildest dreams would imagine that our business would just shut down within a span of 72 hours.
Yeah.
And I will never forget that. And Yeah, no, and I'll always remember it. And it was quite a time. And what I will say about being a leader is that you really figure out if you're a great leader during the worst of times, because during good times, pretty much anybody can be a leader. I think it's really during the worst of times that you really have to, build the muscle of all the things that you've learned and maybe didn't focus on before during the depths of despair when you don't know if you're ever going to get back into business.
I can so relate to that, and that's why I wanted you to kind of go there. And again, not to bring up the worst part of your career, but it's like you said, it was probably the biggest leadership turning point. And I mean, because first of all, you're on a personal side, you've got family, your COVID's happening, you've got all the emotion around that. Then you've got everything being tested, revenue. I'm sure you guys had employee reductions and stuff like that. You've got the stock price. You've got literally everything that could happen happening at once. And other than I guess Bill Gates, like no one saw it coming in the way that it came and shut everything down. You know what I mean?
Right.
And so, what did you learn through that? I mean, what did you learn about your leadership? What did you learn about your team? What were some of the big lessons that came out of that?
Well, what was interesting during that time is we kept thinking it was only going to be a few months. So, when we shut down in March, we thought we'd be back in the summer. When the summer came and went, we thought we'd be back by the holidays. When the holidays came and went, we thought we'd be back by the end of first quarter. And it just went on and on and on. And what did I learn? I learned that. And a woman asked me something. I know her very well. She's very high up at Corn Ferry. And she and I were chatting one day. Corn Ferry is the search firm for anyone who doesn't know, but
Sure.
we were chatting one day and she asked me, Lisa, what does it feel like being for someone who prides themselves on being in control and always wants to be in control? How does it feel to be completely out of control? And that was a really very profound and very perceptive question for her to ask me because I never thought of it in that way. And when you're a leader and when you're a president, CEO of a brand and a business, a multi-billion-dollar business, and you're building ships and you're making decisions and you're figuring out how to launch them and how to price your brand and how to improve your brand and blah, 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 you feel like you have control over your business, right? Things happen on any given day, weather, things like that. But a pandemic and shutting down, it tested every part of me. I'm driven. I hold people accountable. We have aggressive financial targets and metrics. We have aggressive guest satisfaction metrics, safety metrics, and you're driving toward those every day. And then all of a sudden, nothing's happening. No business is coming in, no cost the ship, no crew is on. It took us almost a year to get all of our crew home. And so I had to put those parts of me aside that were probably the strongest in what I practiced every day and ramp up the empathy, the inspiration, the motivation, instilling hope in people, trying to keep people confident, keep them positive when everything was so negative. Even when I wasn't any of those things on any given day, I would
Right.
wake up every day and just, talk to myself and say, all right, you've got to make sure 20,000 people feel like this is going to end and we're all going to be fine. And so I had to manage myself differently and I had to dial down all those driven things and dial up all of those empathetic and caring things because people needed something different from me. And I think leaders have to understand at any given time, what do people need from me today?
Mm-hmm.
And so I built those muscles pretty well over 15 months and kept people. And I remember getting back on the ships after we finally got back into service. And I remember the crew. Oh my goodness. Ken, it was unbelievable. So many of them came up to me with tears in their eyes and said, thank you for bringing us back. Thank you for ensuring we got our jobs back so we could provide for our families. And thank you for giving us hope for 15 months that we would, we would be able to come back. And that felt really good, just like all of the great financial results I got and all of the great accolades the brand got and I got. Um, that probably for me was the thing that made me feel the best as a leader and made me feel like I did well during that time.
Yeah, I got to think when any leader is reflecting back on their career, if it's a few years from now and you're really looking back in the rear view, it is going to be those times, right? It's going to be the
Yeah.
people, the
Yep.
connection times,
Yep.
because
Yep.
the third quarter results from
Yep.
fiscal year 22, it's like those
Yep.
were important in the moment, but like long term, there was a whole lot of
Yep.
quarters that you were at that company. So that's amazing. Tell me about how did you get the nod to be the president of and chairwoman of the FIFA Committee for World Cup in 2026?
Uh, well, I've always done a decent job in making connections and building a network. I always felt it was important for me personally within the community, whether it was through philanthropic things or organizations. I felt it was good for me personally, and I felt it was really good for our brand and really good for our business. And I always tried to be available for other women who were. Um, thinking about their own careers and how they could advance. I'm not the only woman who grew and achieved something in an industry that a lot of women, hadn't been able to accomplish that yet. And so I remember having dinner with a woman who had asked a gentleman that I've worked with if I would have dinner with her because she was trying to think through her own career and she had seen what I had accomplished and knew a lot about me. And so I enthusiastically said yes. And I
Yeah.
ended up having dinner with her. She was terrific. And we ended up staying connected. And lo and behold, as I was leaving the company, and she was the chief of staff for a person who was an integral part of the leadership, the community leadership for the World Cup, and they were looking for a CEO. She reached out to me. She sent me a text and said, "Do you have 5 minutes?" And then she and I talked, and then I talked to a lot of other people. And what was interesting about the World Cup, the FIFA World Cup role, which is very similar to all the other things that I did in my career. I don't know anything about soccer. I always say everything I know about soccer or football, I learned from Ted Lasso. So I was not a subject matter expert. And nor was I for most of the positions that I held throughout my career. But what I was a corporate CEO who ran a serious business. There are 11 host cities around the country and 16 in North America hosting these events. Make no mistake, it's a big business. You have to raise a lot of money. It's a logistical challenge with transportation, security, volunteers, 10,000 volunteers. I led 20,000 people. Um, and a P&L, and I led a P&L and great fan experiences. And I led great guest experiences. So for all of the things that I had done in my career that were very similar to the things that I needed to do there, they offered the role to me, and like so many other roles that I took on throughout my career, I said, I'll hire smart people that know more about soccer and all of these different components than I do, and I'll put together a strong team and they'll help me be successful. And that's sort of the model that I've had throughout my career.
What does that ramp up look like right now for the? I mean, are you guys already at 2 years out? You're in the thick of it at this point,
Oh
or
yeah,
yeah?
yeah, yeah. No, it's a big deal and we're in the throes of it. Yeah. And it's about 18 months now, 18, 19 months. It was almost 3 years when I first started talking to people, and time flies, I have to say that. And yeah, everybody's in the throes of organizing this. All the host cities, FIFA, and even the federal government, because there's a lot that the federal government's going to have to do and help us with, because this is a monumental task for all of the United States, 11 major cities across the United States.
Yeah, I can't even think of the logistics that go into it when you're thinking of traffic patterns, and I mean,
Right.
it's everything. It's
Right.
crowd
Yeah.
flow. It's like all this Yeah, all this
Yeah.
stuff that seemingly is like
Yeah.
way over my head, but like you,
And
if I was in there, I'd be
well,
hiring people that knew what they were talking about.
and it's hundreds of thousands. It's like it's probably going to be 7 or 800,000 people for the Miami matches. Forget how many are going to show up in all these different cities across the country. Um, and it's going to be the entire state of Florida.
Right.
The matches are happening in Miami, but this will go as far north as Orlando and as far west as Tampa. All the airports are going to be full. All the hotels are going to be full. People are going to want to go to Disney and Universal and come to matches and go to fan fests. And, it's a big deal. So you have to think about how are these people going to move around and how are we going to make sure we do this the best way possible. Every one of these cities already has traffic problems. Imagine, when you bring in another 800,000 people over a 5 or 6 week period of time.
When you mentioned hiring some people, getting some people in there that could help you with some of the holes, maybe, but I imagine in an organization like that, you inherit a certain amount of organizational structure as well, right? Like when you walk in,
No,
is there's not even you just build your own
no.
team, really?
Yeah, you have to build your own team. Yeah. Well,
Wow.
any type of these sporting events, like a Super Bowl, like the Olympics, like the World Cup, you have to build a team. You have to start with who's going to lead it, and then you have to bring in subject matter experts in marketing, fundraising, operations, events, legal, finance. I mean, you have to build a team. And then of course that team is a temporary team because it's only 2 or 3 years or even a year and a half. And so once the event is over, the event is over and everybody goes and looks for another job. So
Yeah.
it's quite a unique um, proposition.
Yeah.
It's quite unique in a lot of different ways, but it's also really exciting.
Because it's also for somebody like yourself that 35 plus, over 35 years, right? With one company.
Yeah, almost 40. Yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
So
39.
you're
Yep.
used to bringing people on going, hey, you can do what I did. You come on, you move up, you do this. We've got all this opportunity.
Yeah.
And in this, it's like, it's
Yeah.
a set period of time. You're not
Yeah.
really painting a strategic vision beyond the 2026 thing, but I guess they know that when they get in. So switching gears just a little bit, I know that you've mentioned it a couple of times here that the cruise that you guys did a week before COVID, all women. You had a big part in that. Obviously, you were a driver in that. You mentioned earlier, you're the first woman CEO. You're the first woman in several points in your career. What does it mean to you to be a leader in gender diversification, and how do you feel like we're doing? I know that's a big question, but
Yeah.
is it getting
Well,
better?
let me start let me start with how I felt about it. Um, Listen, I believe that diverse cultures are strong cultures. I believe in diversity of thought. I believe in people who are qualified for opportunities should get them, regardless of race, color, creed, religion, gender, sexual orientation. I think, this is what makes things more positive and productive. And it's also a signal to other people that they belong. And I think it's very important. So when I was appointed to my position, I knew that I needed to do more to help bring other women along because regardless of if they were qualified or not, they were hitting ceilings and they weren't getting the big jobs and they weren't getting the good jobs and they weren't being, recognized and developed so that they could get these positions. And I wanted to change that because I felt it was really important to change that because I felt it was wrong to discriminate against all of these amazing people that were on our ships because they were women. So I knew I needed to make a move that would signal that I was serious about gender balance. And I remember being at Royal Caribbean in charge of Marine and Hotel and meeting a staff captain at a conference. And that staff captain was Captain Kate McHugh. So Captain Kate McHugh had been a staff captain at Royal Caribbean for 9 years. She had been the top ranked staff captain at Royal Caribbean for 13 contracts in a row, and she
Whoa.
had still not been promoted to captain. while I was there, even though there were openings for captains throughout the couple of years that I was there. The brand was going, some captains retired, but Kate was never promoted. So I always believe everything happens for a reason, even though I tried to encourage the man that was in charge of Marine at the time and hiring the captains that she should be promoted. He kept telling me, her time will come. And her time did come. Her time came when I went over to Celebrity and I wanted to make her a captain. And I extended that opportunity. And she said, hell yes. And so she was really the beginning of my intentional decision and approach to gender balance. She was the first and is still the only American woman who's the captain of a mega cruise ship. We went from 3% of women on the bridge to 33% of women on the bridge during my time. And that's really a big deal because there aren't even a lot of women who opt into these careers. So to be able
Sure.
to get 33% of them, and at any given time, there could be 70, 80% of the bridge team as women, which is really kind of cool. But I also want to say that the way I did that is because I worked with amazing men who also believed in gender balance. And they're the ones that went out. The gentleman that ran marine operations was a very good friend of Kate's, and I asked him if he would ask Kate if she would come over, and he did. And he believed in gender balance, and he was going to the maritime academies and hiring women and finding women even with other cruise companies um, or the Navy or Coast Guard and bringing them into the business. So we were able to make a tremendous impact both in hotel and marine. We had women hotel directors and women restaurant managers and food and beverage directors. And it's not only the cruise industry. Listen, I'm very familiar with hospitality, all aspects of it, and it's still very male dominated. So let's get to your second question. Have we made progress? Yes, but I still don't think we've made enough because I'm still in a lot of rooms, even now as I've exited out of the business with all these other things I'm doing, boardrooms, private equity companies, meetings. It's still very male dominated. And, it's discouraging that there's a lot of backlash even now to talk about some of these things that I think are important and make a company more successful and more positive. There's a lot of people who don't agree with me and a lot of people who think we should completely move away from them. So, yeah, so I don't know, maybe the pendulum, maybe Eric, I feel that the pendulum has swung a little. Ken, I'm sorry. Maybe I feel like the pendulum has swung a little bit and that's unfortunate. But I also believe, things go one way, another, and eventually we'll find our balance again. And that's my hope.
I'm on board with that. And I also think that, like you talked about earlier, it's if you just look at it as a business owner or as a CEO or a leader, whatever, and if you just look at it from a numbers game and go, if everyone always says that the hardest thing about building a business, growing a business, or anything else is finding the right people, having enough talent, why would you shrink the qualified candidate pool through your own bias? It makes no
No sense.
logical sense at all.
For
By
50% of the
gender,
population, right?
yeah,
For
by
50,
gender or
for 50,
race or
yeah,
sexual
yeah,
preference or anything
yeah,
else, it
yeah.
just doesn't.
All right.
It doesn't add up. It just doesn't.
No, no,
It's very
no,
shallow and short thinking,
yeah,
and it will stunt growth.
it was.
Because also you said you believe in the diversification of ideas, and it's the same thing. If I'm hiring all white dudes like myself in their 50s, I'm going to get, people that graduated high school in the 1980s. I'm going to get people that listen to the same music. I'm going to get people that had similar life experiences, which is nice as far as feeling part of a group, but feeling part of a group is not conducive to growth from all groups, right? So,
Yeah.
um, what do you think? I have another spin on this. I want to ask you this: is just a woman in business that's been really successful? I'd have to think that one of the reasons you were so successful, yes, you had people advocating for you. I'm guessing you were also really good at advocating for yourself and knowing what you wanted. You were in sales, you were in marketing, you were driven. I My advice sometimes to women that I've had on my team that had tremendous potential is don't sit back. right? I mean, you've got to tell people what you want. You've got to be an advocate for your own, not to the point where it's obnoxious. Uh,
Right.
and I don't, I'd give that advice to any male or female, but I feel like traditionally men were bigger advocates of blowing their own horn, so to speak. You know what I mean? More than women. I have no stats to back that up, but what are your thoughts?
I think there are stats to back that up. Um, but I will tell you that again, it's another lesson I learned. My book is full of lessons I learned. And the reason that I wanted to share those lessons was so that other people would not make the same mistakes I did. And yes, I did figure out what I wanted. I did figure out that I could make it to a higher position than just the head of sales. And I did start advocating for myself and sticking up for myself, but it was much later in my career than it probably should have been, to be honest. Um, I people say, what did you learn? What would you tell your younger self? I would tell my younger self, believe in yourself more than as much as others believe in you, because I didn't, and dream bigger because I didn't. Um, and I learned, but I also have to say that once I made my decisions and once I started advocating for myself, it didn't always happen the way or in the
Sure.
timing that I wanted it to. I was told no a lot. I was told I wasn't ready. I was told no. I was, not picked for positions other people were picked for, even though I had asked for those positions and made it very clear I wanted them and worked really hard to get them. And I had to just, I always say I was like that. I don't know if do you remember Weebles? Those things that are
Yeah,
round
yeah,
on the
yeah.
bottom. You remember
Yes.
the Weebles? Okay.
Yes.
So, Ken, you know how you punch the Weeble and it just keeps
Yeah, it
coming
just
back up? You
bounces
punch
back.
it
Yeah.
down? Yeah. That's what I look at myself as, the Weeble. You can keep punching me, you can keep putting me down, you can keep telling me no, but I'm going to keep coming back and I'm going to turn that no into a yes. I'm going to prove you wrong. And that's how I spent my entire career, honestly. I was, though, yes, I had advocates who moved me around, but, then I had people that were giving me they were moving me around, but it was like a consolation prize because they didn't think I could do this. And even when I went into those environments where I was the only woman because all these men thought I couldn't do it, and why did she get this job? She's not qualified. She's not from operations. She's never been a captain. She's never been a chief engineer. She doesn't know how to drive a ship or fix an engine. So much of my career was proving people wrong, that I did deserve the position that I had, that I was a good leader, that I could be their boss. These men were all looking at me like, how are you going to be my boss? And, I decided to take the approach of mutual respect and say, listen, I can't do what you do. You're a captain. You're an engineer. I can't do those things. And I respect the fact that you are a subject matter expert, but maybe you should respect the fact that there's a reason I'm here. And let's see if we can, this can be a mutually beneficial relationship. I can help you and you can help me. And that's really how I tried to approach it, because every time I got one of those positions, that's what I bumped into.
Yeah, well, and it's not possible in a 20,000 plus employee company to have excelled at every job in the company. I mean, there's just entire departments that you've missed, at different times or another. And
Right. Right.
I agree. Mutual respect is the path forward. I remember I early in my corporate career, I was moving from like a general manager operational role, being considered for a director role. Didn't have a college degree, so I had this kind of chip on my shoulder that benefited me, and that I always felt like there's no way this can be a tie, right? Like I'm not going to win a tie. Like I'm not even supposed to really
Yeah.
be here. But now that I'm here and I'm getting great results, I can get myself promoted. But I've got to make it clear, right? They can't be considering three candidates. It's just going to be me and then everybody else. So I went into this director level interview, and I thought I crushed it. And we had amazing results. I had an awesome team, and I didn't get it. And I remember just being just devastated, and I wasn't quite like a weeble in that moment. I was just knocked down, for a few days. And then I talked to my boss, and he said, "Hey, great job." And I'm like, "What do you mean great job? Like I didn't get it." And he said, "No, no, like, this isn't the first kind of interview you're going to have like this in your career. It certainly won't be the
Right.
last, and it's
Right.
not the first
Right.
letdown that you're going to
Right.
have." And to have
Right.
yourself considered this early in your career, your name's out there now, and just
Yep.
and then again, the
Yeah.
constructive criticism on what the other person had that I didn't have, and and I went to work, and 4 months later, I got the same kind of role in a different geography. But I do think that's important for people to know what they want, to be resilient. That's the Weeble, right?
Yep.
And
Yep.
to let
Yep.
people know what you want. I mean, leadership. I think even the most in tune, empathetic, in touch leaders are still not going to be able to read your mind about where you want your career to go. You've
Right.
got to be an advocate for
That's right.
yourself.
That's right. That's right.
Yeah.
And I also realize that people, you have to put yourself in front of the right people,
Yeah.
as you're advocating for yourself, right? Because I used to be in rooms all the time where the executive leadership was talking about candidates for a role, and you know let's say there were six of us. Two of us knew the candidate, four of us didn't. And the four people, well, I don't really know them. What have they done? I haven't seen what they've done. And so again, one of the things I say is like, advocate for yourself, like two levels up, not just one level up, and across an organization, not just within the discipline that you're in, because you're going to be talked about in these rooms by these people, and people need to know what you've done. They have lunch with people, schedule lunch with people, and good executives and companies will do that for people because people want to grow. And, unless someone knows you and knows what you're about and knows what you've accomplished, you're not even going to be able to get that interview like you did, Ken,
Yeah.
right? You get an interview, you didn't get it the first time. Me too. I didn't get it the first time. I didn't get it the second time. I finally got it the third time. I had to ask three times before I finally got it. And it was frustrating as hell for me, to be perfectly honest with you. I remember talking to the Girl Scouts. I went to do a thing at the Girl Scouts, and I was given like an honorary Girl Scout badge because I was never a Girl Scout. And I'm talking to these Girl Scouts, and I was talking about how I resented the fact that it took me three times. And I remember thinking to myself, you're telling these young girls about resentment. But what I said was, I turned that resentment into motivation.
Hmm.
Like, I turned a negative thing that I felt into a positive thing. And sometimes, like you said, you have that chip on your shoulder that's going to make you push harder, work harder, and convince people they're wrong.
Yeah, I think as long as it can be used for fuel, right, and we're not just
Yeah.
so devastated that now
Right.
it impacts
Right.
everything. And I
Right.
think going back to what
Right.
you were saying about making sure that people know you, one of the things that I realized early on, and I'm always careful in how I phrase this because it sounds a little bit like politicking, but everybody within a corporation, especially where you're not going to know everybody. It's impossible to know everybody, even the highest level people. It's hard to know everybody. And you're a brand, whether you like it or not.
Right.
You are
Right.
spoken of as a brand. When your name
Yeah.
comes up, people think certain things. And so everybody to me is a potential advocate or a detractor. And this means everybody. So
Yep.
the maintenance crew, the travel
Yeah.
department,
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
everybody. So treat everybody the way you'd want to be treated,
Yeah.
because you're going to be out of a room sometime when your name is brought up in that room. And you want fans. I mean, you just want people going,
Right.
I've met
You
her
do.
and no, we
And
didn't work directly, but oh God, she's
yeah.
awesome or he's awesome
Yeah.
or whatever.
Yeah.
And yeah, I learned that very I think fairly quickly. I like going into organizations and going, who are kind of the players and how do things work here, and you
Yeah.
can see different things too. I'm sure even going into one of your board meetings, I would be able to know probably who your closest advisors were just by the body language or the way that
Yeah.
people change when that person speaks. You know what I
Sure.
mean?
Sure. Yeah, no,
Yeah.
I absolutely know what you mean. And listen, make no mistake, there are politics in corporate America.
Sure.
That's the reality of it. Um, you don't have to look at those things in a negative way. You can look at them the way you look at them because I feel the exact same way. I remember when I was appointed to the president and CEO role, the groundswell of support that I had in the company and how happy people were for me. And what I always say is when other people are happy for you and invested in your success and want to see you succeed, you have a much higher probability of succeeding.
Oh, of
And
course.
I really tried to make sure, and that's also how I learned different things that I wasn't the subject matter expert in. I asked for help. And I've seen so many executives come into our company who didn't want to ask for help because they looked at that as a sign of weakness. And I always used it as a sign of strength because when you ask someone for help, they're very flattered and they want to help you be successful. And showing vulnerability is a strength, not a weakness. And so, I practiced those things throughout my career, which also helped me number one, be successful in the job that I was given that I wasn't the subject matter expert in, but also helped me build a network of people who thought highly of me and supported me if I wasn't in the room and people were asking questions about me. And it's not that I wasn't direct. It's not that I didn't hold people accountable. It's not that everybody agreed on everything every day. But if you treat people with respect and they know you're coming from a place of the right motivation and the right motives, then you can still do all the other things you have to when you are in a position like I was in, which is not easy and kind of lonely sometimes.
Totally. I mean, the thing you mentioned earlier and then brought up again today about mutual respect, there's nothing more disrespectful than ignoring someone's value and saying, I don't
Yes.
need you. I've got it
Yeah,
figured out because
exactly.
we're too weak as leaders to actually ask
Right.
for help. And yeah, I'll
Yeah.
ask for it wherever I can get it. I mean, I kind of think sometimes, and especially in the level of role you are in, it's almost like you're the orchestrator of all the talent, right? Like you're the
Right.
conductor
Yeah. Yeah.
of the band, sort of, right? And it's like it
Yeah.
doesn't mean you have to be good at any one individual instrument.
Right.
Actually, you just have to be good at
Right.
bringing them all together. You know?
Yeah. Yep. And
Well,
and making them sound harmonious and beautiful. You're
yes,
absolutely right. And that's a skill in and of itself because that's not being a leader. I always tell people, listen, being a leader is not for the faint of heart. And it's really hard. But if you do it well and you do it right, it's so rewarding. It's incredible.
it's amazing. Well, it's been great talking to you. It's flown by.
Same here, same here.
What's next after World Cup? Any plans?
So, yes, Ken. So I want to get back to my original plan. Um, I spent 40 years in corporate America and it was hard. And COVID, added, you can add 10 years for COVID. And when I decided to step away, it was because of that stress and pressure and 24/7 that at this stage of my life was, something that I thought I needed to be done with. And I wanted to do other things. I wanted to focus on my book. I have a leadership academy that I just launched, and I wanted to join corporate boards. And I wanted to spend more time back in my hometown, more time with my family and my husband, and enjoy my life a little bit. Because when you're in that constant grind, it's really hard to just stop and breathe. And that's what's next. So I'm on the AutoNation board, publicly traded company. I'm the chairwoman of the board for Hornblower Group. As of September, going to join another one, maybe two boards. Going to finish up the World Cup, and I'm going to go back to the plan I had when I decided to step away from a corporate career after 39 plus years.
Amazing. Well, thank you so much,
It,
and congrats on all your success and really on where you're at now, because
thanks.
it seems like you're entering a really fun and fulfilling chapter that's going to make all that hard work, pay off now.
Yeah. Well, Ken, that's actually a good point, and I'd love to just spend a second talking about it before we say
Sure.
goodbye. Number one, it's been an absolute pleasure talking to you. What a
Thank
lovely
you.
conversation, and it flew by.
It did.
But also, I think it's important that people understand that there's something else, right? There are next chapters. And when I was making that decision, part of my journey is I talk about three things: smarts, heart, and courage. It took a lot of courage to walk away from something after 39 years, and especially being president and CEO of such an amazing brand, because sometimes you don't know where your job begins and ends. You think you're it, and it's the only thing that defines you. But my lesson is it isn't.
Right.
And if you've got a great body of work and a tremendous amount of respect and you leave a good legacy and you've done really well, there's so much other opportunity for you that just might look and feel a little different.
I love that. And losing maybe the idea that you are any one thing, like you're just the CEO.
Right,
You're
right.
lots of other things other than that. So,
Yes,
and
you
you're
really
proven
are. And people appreciate those things too if you've done it right.
totally. All right. Well, thank you
Totally.
so much. And I hope our paths cross
Thanks,
again
Ken.
soon.
I do too. It's been an absolute pleasure. Take care and listen. Happy holidays because
You,
they're fast approaching.
they are next
Ciao.
week. Oh my God.
Oh my God is right.